To continue, this is part 2 of the episode called Endless Potential Explanations for an Infinite Universe in Expanse. And in the subtitle, I've also written Secret Hallways of the Evolutionary Mind. This is just a poetic interpretation of the first title. First of all, okay, I hope my voice is clear. It's the same setup. You see, the world is not actually definable or understandable by human beings, but human beings can understand how they can participate in the system. Do you see? It's like energy. Imagine like bubbles at the bottom of a kettle that's boiling. They lift up, they go towards the top, and it's kind of like energy poetically from the earth lifted up. Do you see? That means it was as if like an intelligence became matter, and then it became matter to such a degree that it could separate from its environment. Really, the story of the human being is super extraterrestrial vibe. Do you know? People don't understand this. Like, what is happening on this planet it surpasses human contentment. I am telling you, the bizarre lives among us. You know. Anyways, it's edgeless world. We arise as an intelligent phenomenon, as an intelligent particle. This intelligence, at its core way of defining itself, it's energetic. That means let's say right now in culture, humanization of course is in a battlefield. But I'll tell you, it's kind of like, if a person can't be human, what can they be? They can be energy. Energy, and those people who have a relationship with reality that is more energetic focused. It's like the wise karmic yogis. The energetic truth of nature is balance. Because we are seeking energy, pretty much what is survival of the fittest, to find the energy to survive. On some level, everything can be said to be energy, and in some sense be animated by energy. Now, the unique thing is, it's like, imagine on a rock in the middle of nowhere, suddenly some, let's say, advanced intelligence sprinkled geometry that could learn and grow. This might be a bizarre thing to say, but somebody's got to say it. You know? That I think we are all human beings alive right now. We are here post a previous memory. You know what it is? It's like, what's the personality of an energy field? The personality of an energy field is every animate thing in the field. You know, the mystery of human intelligence surpasses both fiction and non-fiction. It brings man to such a point where your heaven was always there and your hell never existed. Do you know? It's as if a person shifting beyond the framework of an egoic selfhood comes to realize that the whole space is their mind, the whole space of their intelligence. In the part one, this is part two, but in the part one of this episode, I explained that there's different type of yogis and there's different ways of looking at life. I am trying to suggest that life is a multidimensional dynamic event. And this multidimensional dynamic event, it cannot be entrapped by just one sector of it. It's as if, like, you know, the person saying, I am the brain, not realizing they are the whole body at once. You see, this is the signs of a universal being. This is the signs that a human being has stepped out of their inner hell, and they have also stepped out of the outer hell. You know what it is? It's as if, like, I'll share with you one of the most beautiful stories, epic stories I have heard in this lifetime. There were these three Sufi friends, and these three Sufi friends, they go pretty much, it's okay, this is how the story starts. This is like thousands of years ago, you know, three Sufis who were friends, like from childhood, let's say. And these three friends, you know, they are going to the edge of town and they notice that a wall has appeared that never existed before. This giant wall has appeared at the edge of their town. And what happens is that as these three friends are walking, you know, beside the wall, they suddenly see a ladder that goes to the top of the wall. The first friend goes up, and he gets to the top. The two friends are holding the ladder. This is an important note. And the first friend goes up, he gets to the top of the wall, he looks on the other side, and how the story goes is that there is actually a heaven. So the first friend looks on at the other side of the wall and sees this paradise. Jumps in without saying anything to the other two friends. You know, the two friends that are holding the ladder, they're like, okay, what's up with that? The second friend goes up, now only one person's holding the ladder. The second friend goes up to the wall, sees the other side. Sorry guys, my attention was taken by something. I'll say this. The second friend goes up, he sees the heaven. Before he jumps into that heavenly dimension on the other side of the wall, he looks at the first friend and he says, there's heaven up here, and he jumps in. The third friend, which is pretty risky. Nobody's holding the ladder. He goes up this ladder and reaches the top, and he suddenly sees what the first two friends had seen. He sees a dimension. He sees a better version of the world. And there's a moment where he wants to jump in, but then he suddenly climbs down the ladder alone. But when he climbed up the ladder, he was nervous. When he climbed down, he was very relaxed. And so the idea is that this guy saw the heavenly dimension, and he said to himself, there is heaven up here, the world should know. Okay? This means that among all the types of explanations for reality that human beings are seeking, there could be the possibility that our suffering is dimension-based. That means suffering is like how the person's personal intelligence, goes through a chemical reaction with the worldly intelligence. There's some people who meditate to get out of time, and there's some people known as futurists who are just meditating on time. I was listening to an audiobook from Marcus Aurelius, and in his meditations he starts off by pretty much saying all the things he has learned from different people. And if I was to say, what have I learned from the world, that means forget people. Imagine like you see the human species and you're like, man, this is just robotic, biological kind of conditioning. It's like when you see that, like I'll be honest, there was one night where I was, a bit intoxicated, and for a moment I just stopped everything, sat down and wondered, do I hate the world or do I love the world? Which one is it? And that contemplation led to something so bizarre. It was like a revelation of my own nature entering, the conscious mind. And I realized that a part of me hated the world. And when I say hated the world, not anything specific in it. Hated the way karma existed. It's as if for a second my psyche managed to find a complaint against the lords of karma, right? But here's the funny thing. The more you wonder, you treat yourself as a body, the more you can be an enslaved, you're in a hierarchical system of intelligence, the more you go within and you identify as a mental being, you'll realize that the body is in your mind. The body is not the mind. It's in your mind. That means it's as if there's a space that's being you, and within this space what is moving, sure, it's like, it's somebody, I realized that a part of me actually disliked existence, just the nature of existence. And I realized the reasoning for that was that in my inner realms, in my own, it's like at the depths of my own mind, I had come to this conclusion that it's like after 4.5 billion years, rare evolutionary opportunities of human beings to communicate, rare privilege of a technological sort of access to information, and suddenly, I don't know how to tell you, it's as if like when you see something better, and when you see that something better is so far away, and you see that on a planetary scale, like at some point, this might be bizarre to say, even though I talk about advanced civilizations, but there's been moments where I have been pure hopelessness. People usually talk about the good emotions. I have hope. It's like great, but it's like I don't know how many people have had true hopelessness. When I say hopelessness, this is not like the present hopelessness. It is the hopelessness of where can this intelligent event we're calling human civilization on Earth, where is it going? Where can it possibly go? And the logic of it is so bizarre in the sense that it's so simple, yet the past, you know what it is? It's like This is the challenge of teaching. This is why I'm saying we should abandon the concept of students and teachers. Like, that's a waste of theatrics. Like, that's just theatrics, you know. What really it is that it's as if 8 billion intelligent moments that are researching their realm. Do you know? That is incredible. You see, it's as if, like, if you physically want to know what's incredible, okay, sure. It's like, you know, the beggar found his palace. Great, you know. Then, if you want to talk about sort of inner, the advancement of your mind, that means imagine you're a person who you're like, okay, my body has a life on this planet, but my mind also has a life on this planet. Now, what is the furthest possible, most advanced possibility of what the mind can do? And strangely, you know what it is? In the era of multidimensionality, many people dislike the ego because and how it's made of language. But I am telling you, it's like a bunch of monkeys found like an advanced, you know, technology, and somehow that technology was being them. You know, the mysteries of consciousness. Again, they surpass humans. That is the challenge of the educational system. You know, imagine imagine there's in the future there's going to come a legend of a person who went to every university, you know, who had a degree from every university, and there was a Guinness Book of World Records kind of race for that. Okay, it's as if the most perfect student, you know, comes to the teacher and says, "Teacher, I have mastered your final teaching. What do I do now?" And the teacher's like, "All right, man, you're no longer a student. Get out of here." And what I'm trying to say is that from it's as if, you see, it's the economy of the world is hilarious. It's like there's an economical system that is supplying people with what they need, and the psychological reasoning for need is incompleteness. So in reality, this is why I talk about civilization 2.0, is because what civilization 1.0 is doing now, what the political systems of the world, it's like I will comment on global politics, but nothing too, like, you know, national politics, I don't care. But when I say global politics, I'm talking about how all the leaders of all the nations on the planet in the future, 100% is going to happen. I don't know when, you know, but in the future, there's going to arise a moment where all the leaders of human activity on Earth, they suddenly realize it's like all this psychology and this notion that the elites are controlling people, right? Is like the dumbest thing. Let me tell you why. Because if the elite chooses to control people, the elite is destroying the potential of how far a species on a rock can go. Do you see? People don't need religion, okay, to become humble. If people just realize the existential position, you know, it's as if from a sort of silent nod came, you know, the might to build an advanced civilization. Pretty much the title of this episode is me saying that there is so many different ways that minds are simulating reality as I'm speaking right now, that it's as if the only way to truly see what this world is to actually go to the source of yourself, where the idea, where the vision of yourself comes from. Whenever you wonder about this, you become a mystic, and you also open yourself up into experiencing from a state that you do not know. Do you know? That means it's as if, like, imagine you are an explorer on a planet in the middle of nowhere. Like, if children are taught this view, they'll become geniuses. I am telling you. Because we're energetic beings, energy translates, right? To me, I see a lot of how would I say this? It's like ever since I saw language as a technology, I have seen emotions as a technology as well. You know, there's so you go and look at the concept of magic, and sure, there's like this esoteric mythological magic, but that's like fucking old school. You know, it's like the true magic of reality is how the possible comes to happen. You see what it is? The human being has to have desires because that's a sort of inner psychological reaction to change. Do you see? It's as if like through an incredible global silence and stillness. Imagine something happens on this planet that makes everybody on the planet just become silent and still, as if they can't move in the shock of what has just happened. When that moment comes, it's as if I am telling you something that many people don't talk about, even, you know, people with the longest periods of wisdom don't ever talk about, is that as you go, as you walk in this world towards its end, you are actually noticing how existence is temporary. That is like the teaching. Every moment where there is change, new dimensions enter and old dimensions leave. You know. You know, some people have spirit guides and some people their own spirit guides them. You know, it's all conditional. It's all storytelling. When you realize life is more than storytelling, it's as if you will have tears of sorrow and joy at the same time. Why? You'll have tears of sorrow by suddenly realizing what humanity is missing out on by trapping itself in a singular storyline, being constantly abashed by duality. There's ways we as a species can be alive that surpasses duality. People don't realize this. People don't realize that we are unknown attention looking out through a known phenomenological opportunity. The worlds we live in and the worlds that live in us, it's honestly like in a multi-dimensional game, we're trying to be a singular character of justice, not realizing that in a changing world, efficient transition is the greatest justice. You know, this notion that power is like chaining. You see, there's this very profound concept. I would bring this into part of philosophy, but it's that end. You see, it's the fruit, it's the end result of the archetype of power. The archetype of power, its end result is the ultimate freedom of a personality which can control. You know, some people think about freedom as if they're not enslaved. Some people think about freedom as if like the greatest freedom is to, in some sense, reach the God archetype. Do you understand? It's like a dance between creation and creator. Those people on the planet who are like, I'm just a simple creation, we're like, oh, look at these humble souls. And those people who want to be, let's say they are born with a sort of heroic spirit, conqueror spirit, you know, past life king's momentum kind of spirit, you know, it's as if it's like there's that desire is to see what can happen. You see, our minds are making, this is really what ambitions are, promises of potential possible futures. And ambition is like a parallel parallel universe's outcome. And the sophistication of like what attention is doing here, like, you know, it's like The same way the physical world changes, it changes slower compared to how many times throughout the day our perspective on what is being the moment changes. It's like remarkable. And it's very strange, because I have wondered for such a long time. Like, you go talk to mystics and, like, people who've been in nature, and they're like, buddy, just be like the birds, be like the tree, be like animals. They're just super chill and relaxed, right? And then there's this other view where why do we as a species, compared to all the other types of species on this planet, see something that they don't? It's like the ticket to that Willy Wonka factory. Do you understand? It's like our species has been bestowed with, I've made notes here, of a third sight. Now, how would I explain to you the third sight? Let me start from here. A lot of people talk about the third eye, and they believe the third eye is the pineal gland. Certain mystical traditions, their view is different. They see that what people call the third eye is actually where the soul is being. Imagine the soul was like this sphere, energetic sphere. This small sphere in like where the pineal gland is. Like, imagine it's like if the soul was living inside like a specific organ, it would be there, like in ancient mythology we were talking about. Not mythology, in ancient mysticism. What it is really is that, for me, there has been times where my intuition, I'll say this because it's like true, something that's happened to me, where I get this intuitive vibe where I've said this to some people, but it's strange for them. I go into my forehead, and what I mean is that I become my presence before my personality, and when I become my presence before the personality, that's another way of saying that I become my mind before anything can happen to my body. When I say you become your mind, I mean that instead of starting from thinking that there's a third eye and balancing a chakra wheel, right? I'll say this, that, the mysteries of mysticism are the search for the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth cannot be, nothing is greater than that. Do you understand? It's as if like a human being on earth is like, what is the greatest way that intelligence can move? And it is to understand its source and then reanimate as a creative force. So instead of a third eye, there's something called a third sight, okay? I called it personally in my school of thought, like the inner realms. I use those terms for it. But in modern times, we call it imagination, okay? In ancient Greece, they called it the logos, or Socrates was known to have a sort of relationship with an inner oracle, okay? Now, that inner oracle is probably Socrates' relationship with his own imagination on some level. Now, what imagination is actually access to a third sight that doesn't need light. So if I need to see something in front of my eyes, I need light, at least like candlelight, But I'm saying, like, that's light based conditional to light. But when a person closed, like whoever you are listening to me right now, just close your eyes and visualize, like, visualize a giant bird flying in the sky, like a bird the size of an airplane flying in the sky. Let's say you imagine this, right? and your eyes were closed, and then the next question comes, what was seeing that giant bird in the sky? That's your inner sight. That's the third sight. Okay? The first sight is pitch black. That means any person should probably do this. Sit at some point throughout the day, close your eyelids, and become content with that space. Silence and stillness meditation really helps you. My aim is to unleash the visionary roar of our species. That is a victory for me. If I can see the future generations just, realizing it's like the greatest task, the greatest future is our greatest effort, and the greatest strategy is to release that greatest effort. This is really what the world wants. The world is here to be an endless display of different types of human beings. Some people read history, they're like, I love history, but let me tell you, history is like a desolate, desert of anguish, honestly. Like, if a person really wants to look at history, you'll see pretty much like a species hanging on a cliff, barely pulling itself up, and unique circumstances bring it forth. Do you understand? We are the aliens on Earth when it comes to how different our species is with all the other species. Our mind, our inner sight is really, playfully, let's say you're a young kid listening to this, imagination is your private art studio. That's the healthiest relationship to have. It's a space. Believe it or not, right now as I'm giving this talk, my relationship to myself is not as my body's in space. You see, it's kind of like this poetry of when a person dies, their body returns to the earth. It's like the greatest poetry. And then at the same time, like the mind, which was never physical, returns to the sky. Right? They say this in Greek mythology, Father Sky and Mother Earth. Right? And it's another way of saying, like, your mind is released from shaped boundary, and your body is also released from law, from shaped, abstract law. Right? I mean, because what is the explanation of a human being? Right? Like, the physical explanation of a human being is that through unknown circumstances, right, a giant explosion of a very high temperature energy, right, like the concept of energy existed at the time of the Big Bang. And so this very high level energy cooled down over time. It's pretty much like a blacksmith took out a sword from the furnace, and it's like, oh, look at the human species, yeah? And so it's as if we are the sculpture. The conditional boundaries to our human intelligence is like we have been sculpted by universal laws and events. That means even if human beings didn't have the concept of gods, they would eventually. Why? Because we are always wondering about what is more than us. And the idea of God is just the personification of that. To me, like, some people ask me, do I believe in God? I'll tell you, I believe that my beliefs can never be God. That is my view. God is actually not a concept. It is another way of saying everything that is happening through a singular event of intelligence. That is God. The intelligence of it becomes God. Because if the human being couldn't speak like it could, then it couldn't read. Do you understand? Like, imagine, like, in a parallel, let's say, Okay, guys, my laptop's actually gonna die, so I guess there might be a part 3 to this, maybe or maybe not. But I'll finish it up with this. I'm pretty much saying it's incredibly unknown. Nobody knows what they can do until they do it. Language, aside from like the physical worship of language, it's as if we're objects worshiping subjects. And what is a subject? It is something that our mind is imbuing in the ink. Our attention creates our world, and the source of our attention is our recognition that the creator of this world is not a concept. That means the God beyond language can be pointed to through language, but it is a God beyond language, beyond story. It is, and think of God not being like a character in a story. Think of God being the original force to all that is being, the world, whether it's simulated dimensions, artificial parallel universes. You know, human psychology can go wild in so many ways. It's just that the great questions of what human, it's like the human value system is messed up. Because it thinks that to avoid the future is the ultimate peace. You know what it is? It's as if we are